pleased to be able to introduce our panelists, and this will be the last panel you will have this week, and you are in for a real treat right now. These colleagues from Tupperware Brands are going to share their experience with Global Links, which you just caught a glimpse into, which is a high-impact program that focuses on entrepreneurship and women's economic empowerment. Our moderator today is Elinor Steele. Elinor is Vice President of Global Communications and Women's Initiatives for Tupperware. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know you, Elinor, over the past several months. And Elinor is an amazing corporate leader, an inspiration, and has become a friend. So we're so delighted to know you now. Elinor has been with Tupperware Brands for over 20 years. And she worked her way up through the company to be appointed as Vice President in 2008. And in 2013, she was appointed as an officer of the corporation. She heads up Tupperware's signature initiative called Chain of Confidence, which is all about Tupperware's global passion for empowering women through confidence and enabling financial independence and for them to change their lives through opportunity. And you heard a bit about this passion from Rick Goings, Tupperware's CEO, when he spoke on Monday at the forum. So Elinor has an MBA from the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College in Florida. And she also is one of the leading forces behind the Global Links program. Elinor has received many high-level awards and appointments, including being honored at the 2016 Business Magazine's Women's Inspired Leadership Awards. And she also is a member of the steering committee for the System Initiative on Shaping the Future of Education, Gender and Work, and that's with the World Economic Forum. And also she serves on the steering committee for the UN Women's He for She Initiative. So with that, I will pass the microphone to Elinor and let her introduce our colleagues, Sreedipta and Sharmistha from the University of Calcutta. Thank you.
Thank you. I always think she's talking about somebody else. I guess that's not a bad thing. But it's my honor just to introduce to you two amazing women who are very, very special friends and colleagues in our Global Links program. First, Dr. Sharmistha Banerjee, who was our first scholar from India. She was the 2015-2017 scholar, and she recently completed her Global Links cycle with us. But she's also, in Calcutta, she is the professor of the Department of Business Management at India's University of Calcutta. She's a dual Fulbright scholar. She has extensive international experience in business, microfinance, entrepreneurship. In fact, she'll be leaving for Japan in about a month as a guest professor there at one of their universities. And I think the most admirable quality and thing that makes me the most proud is her tireless commitment to women and girls and serving as such a strong advocate for their progression, young girls and young women like Sreedipta. So thank you so much for making the journey to be here with us from Calcutta.
Thank you, Elinor. Thank you for being so kind.
And then I'd like to introduce you here to Sreedipta Choudhury, who is one of Sharmistha's Global Links change makers. And she was part of the program where there were about a total of 14, correct, and in the whole program. And they did this with no credit, at their own expense, at their own time, after school, during the weekends, whenever they needed to. And she taught them about entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. And then they partnered with Bandhan Bank, which was started by an Ashoka Fellow there in Calcutta. And they make small business loans to women. And Sreedipta was part of that program. And then she was actually chosen as one of a very select few, a mighty group of young change makers that got to come back to Orlando with Sharmistha and go through an intensive 2 weeks at Rollins College. And if I could just quickly introduce Mary, Dr. Mary Conway Datwan from Rollins College in the Crummer Graduate School. She's the professor of international business and social entrepreneurship. So she's our faculty advisor for Global Links there, and we're thrilled that she was able to make it here, and you'll see more of Mary this week. But anyway, I wanted just to introduce my two friends here and get started with some questions for them, because I hope that you will have some questions too at the end. I would just want to give you a quote from Sreedipta, because this is a direct quote. She said, and I have to tell you the huge impact that yesterday had on Sreedipta, and she, I don't think, slept last night because she was still mulling through all of the thoughts and things that Hillary Clinton had said. But her quote is that given the adequate tools and opportunity, a woman has the capability to change the world and make a difference. So that's what I think of with Sreedipta. So these two incredible women are going to help us here today to learn more about our Global Links program. You heard from Rick Goings on Monday and a little bit here from him, but this program would not be successful without his commitment and dedication to the program. It really is a cross-cultural exchange program that we founded. Rick and I developed it in 2011. The idea came, and in 2012 we launched it, working with Mary as well as the U.S. State Department. And so it became this public-private partnership with Tupperware Brands, Rollins College, and the U.S. Department of State in the Global Women's Issues Office. So we have now scaled it in India. We have a second scholar there now, who I hope is watching, Dr. Rumpa Chakraborty, who is also from Calcutta. And from the very first and to now, we have estimated social entrepreneurship training to more than 4,000 university students and faculty and staff. And through the train-the-trainer model that they have been using, we've mentored more than 120 female entrepreneurs in local communities. So now, turn it over to the two of you, and I'd like to ask Sreedipta a question first. What are some of the challenges that women and girls face in India in their efforts to access education? Is it on?
Unfortunate conditions like
It doesn't hear. Hold it up close to your mouth. Yeah.
so unfortunate conditions like gender discrimination against women, poverty, lack of awareness dwarfs the chance of access of quality education to women in India, and especially in India, and the stereotypical vision that the society have of women of being married and solely being responsible for domestic chores. So this really limits the women from their chance of access to quality education.
Absolutely, and I know many of us in our countries face some of those same things.
Yes.
And I know that I remember you sharing with me one time, Sharmistha, about what happens in school when their girls turn about 10 or 11 and what their needs are.
The poor in India have limited access to higher education opportunities because the government-supported higher education opportunities are almost free, but they're very limited. And hence, especially for a girl, this becomes a big challenge. For a girl, it's a double-edged sword. The families sending a girl child for higher education or even post-middle school becomes a burden for the family, one, if they have to pay for it, and secondly, higher educated girls become a social issue because it's difficult to find a spousal match for girls who get more than school or post-secondary education. It becomes an additional, a multiplier burden for the family because a girl who is well educated would need to get married to a boy who is more educated, and the dowry required would be higher. If you know what dowry means, dowry is the amount of money that the girl's father has to pay to get her married. So that way, for poor families, girls' education is a big challenge because the state sector, higher education meaning post-secondary, the schools don't even have bathrooms for girls separately. So it is not only, as has been mentioned, that it is not only the absentia of the girl students beyond the age of puberty, but also teachers who are absent on various days a month. As a result, for the families, it becomes a big challenge who cannot afford private sector education.
Well, I was going to ask you if you had any specific examples from your own experience at University of Calcutta about a positive change in direction for women and girls in educational and employment.
I must share with you this story. The government is making large steps to educate girls, and the private sector and the missionaries also have a major role to play in offering higher education. Now, this girl's family that I know, they are 3 daughters. And when the 3rd daughter was born, no one from the family went to the hospital to bring back the mother and the child because the mother had delivered 3 daughters in a row. And now, these 3 girls, by their mother's determination, have got good education. They are balanced, well-groomed girls. The eldest is a scientist. The 2nd girl works in a US government-supported program, the Obama Singh Grant. The 3rd daughter was a Global Links volunteer. That's how I know that family. And the elder 2 daughters told me the youngest is the brightest, so she got an opportunity in Global Links. So I asked, why do you say so? You all come from the same family. They said, because our father could give us only the government-supported vernacular medium education, the older 2 daughters. And the youngest daughter was spotted by a missionary school. And seeing her talent and condition of the family, she got English medium education. So that made the difference. So that is what a clear example of how quality education makes a difference. Even myself, if I did not go to an English medium school, I wouldn't be here. Because most of my cousins, friends in the neighborhood, went to vernacular medium schools.
We're so glad you did.
Thank you.
We're very thankful for that. Sreedipta, tell us what links that you see between education and economic empowerment for women and girls in India. And how does education empower women?
I think education and empowerment are synonymous because when a woman or anyone is educated, they have better access to opportunities which they wouldn't have if they weren't educated. And especially for women, it is very important for them to be economically independent now so that they can take their own decisions and they do not have to be dependent on their spouse or their in-laws for any decision making. And also, women these days, people are being more aware. They are accessing more education, which is helping them becoming more independent, and they are empowering themselves via education.
Do I dare ask you if you feel empowered?
Yes, and also I was very lucky enough to have had access to quality education. I also went to a missionary school, so even I could say that I am here because I got access to that education.
Wonderful. And the experience yesterday, you and I chatted, we ran into each other in the next door. And I asked you, of all the things that you heard Secretary Clinton say, what was the greatest moment for you that you heard?
She was overwhelming. And I have just watched her on television or on chat shows, and being able to see her live, it was one of an experience. But then the part where she spoke about being resilient is not just about failing once and getting up, it's about failing multiple times and getting up. And she mentioned that the only time you fail is when you fail to try. So that got to me.
Wonderful. So I would like to ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Sharmistha, what some of your main takeaways have been from the Global Links program.
Well, I've been a teacher. I started teaching in middle school, and then I went on to teach at college and university, and I felt so rewarded. I was mentoring students, and I felt, oh, what a big job I'm doing by improving their careers. But as time progressed, I kept asking my question whether I have any meaningful impact on their lives. What is the purpose of my teaching the MBA program? I'm just churning out students of that money-making machine. So when I entered the Global Links program, I realized I was getting unraveling in my mind some of those questions. I found that this was probably the vehicle which I was driving. When I could encourage my students, I initially thought only girl students, but many boys also voluntarily came forward to participate, to go out of their classrooms, to do a non-credit course, which they would spend time, their energies on, to promote businesses with social impact. They did not want to take up internships in large corporations, which were highly paid, good for their CV. So many of my students volunteered to take up mentoring programs, hand-holding programs with micro businesses. These women could hardly read and write, but they had immense potential. And they got a free MBA consultant through this program. So I found that this drove me to the questions that I was thinking in my mind, that the real purpose of my teaching could be reached only when I could motivate even a few to think outside their classrooms, take up assignments which would really have more social impact. And as we say nowadays, return on investment is more in people. Thank you.
And Sreedipta?
Yeah. So just to tell you about the model, I was engaged with a social entrepreneur in a rural area where I mentored her with her business. So something I realized that there is so much talent in the rural areas. It's just they do not have access to the correct tools or correct education, and they are not channelized in the right manner. So when I went to them and when my peers went to their respective entrepreneurs, we saw how what talent they had, and just with a little bit of mentoring, they flourished. They made such transformational change in their own selves. And the woman I was working with, she had employees whom she trained before they got married. And once they got married, like conforming to the social norms, they stopped working because they thought that their priority is just domestic chores and marriage. But then I had to counsel them. I had to tell them how important your brain power is. It's not just investing in your domestic chores. You also have the right to dream, right to do something for yourself. And then I'm so glad that they actually came back to work after my intervention.
So the woman that Sreedipta was working with had, one of the women had a plush toy business.
Yes.
And she had lost most of her workers.
To marriage.
To marriage. And now she's been able to build up her business where she has 12 women working for her.
Who were initially married and then they got back to marriage.
Yes. But now they do both?
Yes, they do both.
That you can do both.
See, they are capable of everything.
You can have it all,
Yes.
right? And the woman, Rakhi Mandal, the woman's name, is Rakhi, now had enough money for her husband to buy a milk delivery truck.
So she's
now
empowering her husband as well. Now her husband is engaged in milk delivery business.
I love it. Sorry, I get so emotional. Sorry.
May I add
Yes,
a point
of course.
here to her story of how she's mentored this lady? They had access to a bank account, and they did not know how to deal with many of the documents required. And while the business progressed, Sreedipta also learned how to deal with the banking system, which is not very simple. It is very complicated as far as paperwork is concerned. So Sreedipta and this business lady, they together learned how to go over the business clearances of a bank transaction. So that was the real dual learning of the Global Links program.
It's like a two-way street. Empowerment is like a two-way street. I empower her, she empowers me, and then she empowers her husband also to get it.
That's the way it should be. So I want to ask you a question, Sharmistha, too, regarding, because Global Links is a public-private partnership, and we have the academic partner as well. What do you think the importance is today and going forward of public and private partnerships, especially in light of education and empowerment, entrepreneurship?
See, in India, mostly the public-private partnerships come around in building a bridge or in building a hospital. But this was a novel initiative where a corporate partner and an academic institution under the umbrella of the Department of State came together to promote a program for engaging young leaders into civic responsibility and community engagement. And a corporation supporting an experimental lab for social entrepreneurship was really a novel initiative. Therefore, we find that this presents a case for us to place before the leaders of the private sector corporations that there is immense potential in taking new initiative for investment in economic empowerment of women in the emerging markets. So the overarching goal would be to communicate to the leaders of the private sector that there is so much potential among girls in empowering them in the developing markets, to communicate to them that the issues and challenges, and to inspire them about solving and designing solutions to those problems which can be implemented at the grassroots level. So involving the different actors of the private sector as well as the state agencies will have a much more far-reaching impact on the real women we would like to empower.
Well, I know that Dr. Rumpa Chakraborty, our new Global Link scholar, is tuning in on the live stream along with a group of her colleagues there from Calcutta, India, as well as ours from Tupperware brands and around the world. And so I just wanted to ask you one last question, and then we'll open it up. Can Global Links and similar programs do to create positive change faster and on a larger scale? Because I believe that this is the future. So Sreedipta, do you have a response on that? And then get from Sharmistha, and then we'll open it up.
Global Links. I think I have been mentoring the new Global Link cycle students, like they're my peers only. So it makes me so happy to see that they are making such good progress. So I think we should scale it up. We should involve more people, more institutions to partner with Global Link so that we can reach more people. Greater the involvement, greater the effort.
Great. Thank you. And Sharmistha and her colleagues that were part of the first round of students, of change makers, are now mentoring the students that have come into the program to help them to ramp up their experience faster. Sharmistha?
Just to add to Sreedipta's views, it is very important for such programs to reach out to the areas where the opportunities are limited, because information asymmetry is very high in India. So to reach out to suburban areas, to vernacular medium schools and colleges, where the girls have so much potential, but they're just deprived of knowing the opportunities. So that is one way we can take programs like this forward.
Wonderful. So we thought we'd like to see if there are any questions in the audience, and it's very hard for me to see. So I see one here in green, and then Aruna. Oh, here, I'm sorry. I told you I can't see. Okay. Do you need a microphone or?
Hi, my name is Disha. I'm also from India, and it's inspiring to hear the stories from both of you. And I vehemently agree with the fact that access to education empowers women a lot, and it opens a lot of opportunities, opens a lot of doors for women. But being from India, I also know how the education system operates in India. What are we teaching the students? When you see actual examples in government curriculum which say, for ugly women, for ugly daughters, fathers have to pay more dowry. When things like these are mentioned in school books, or when things like, mothers work at home and fathers go outside to earn money. When examples of these things are set in books, how do, as teachers, as students, do we draw the line? Access to education is important, but what kind of education?
What kind of education? I think we as teachers have a role to play in the policy making, because as part of being senior teachers, we are very much into academic administration. So I understand every education system has a political agenda in every country of the world. But yes, it is up to us who are empowered to bring in the empowerment in the school curriculum also. So I definitely think it is the responsibility of teachers and my fellow colleagues to bring about the change in the mindset of policymakers of our countries. I agree these things are written in our school books, that a mother cooks and the father earns. Exactly these words are written in school books.
In the green, there, sir. Can we pass a microphone?
Hi.
Oh,
I'm Saad Tariq and I'm from Pakistan. I just feel that we have so many similarities with India in terms of our culture norms, that everything you were talking about is so relatable. Especially the part that if I pursue a PhD right now, my mom's gonna probably really feel very weird about it because she's not gonna be able to find a husband. I have two questions for you. One of the things that I've sort of noticed within our societies, and I know that this is felt in a similar kind of way in India as well, that ambitious women are not really looked in a way that, in a very positive way. We're looked kind of down upon that, she's overachieving because she's crazy. She doesn't have anything else to do. She's probably single. I've heard this. And how do you think that we can, I want to hear your opinion of how we can change that concept. That why is it that a man in our society can be ambitious? And by ambitious, I do not mean wants to run for president only, but just be ambitious about, or just be passionate about something and work towards it, but why not a woman? And how we can change that. My second question to you is that, yes, and we've talked about it, and it's evident how, especially in our countries, women do not have access to education. There's the basic issue in Pakistan of why women should be given access to education because their job is to get married and just raise kids. But there is a large portion of women in our societies that are educated, have gotten the opportunity, but are not doing anything. How do we, I really want to know of how do you think we should engage with that portion of society and elevate their thoughts and drive them towards a direction of helping us and the community of educating other women as well. Thank you.
A couple of questions, if I go backwards. I think she asked, the women who are educated prefer to take the soft option because society is not kind on women who rewrite the prototype gender roles. So one of the ways, as we have been discussing since the last 2 days, is why do not each of us take a stand in convincing just one person, be it the mother or the boyfriend or the father, that education is not only education restricted to textbooks. It means something more holistic, something that we contribute back to the society which has given us this education. So is it kind of what you were saying? So if it's a small turn, each of us take responsibility of convincing one person, one mother-in-law or one husband or one father. So that way maybe small incremental changes can be thought about. And your first question, first you had two parts to the question. How do we change the mindset? Yes, changing mindsets, I imagine, in two ways. One is young mothers. If they are more encouraged to bring up the boys in terms of not as the man being in control, the man being the one who is equal to woman and is part of taking control over each other. So that way young mothers can try to encourage these in their minds. And what I believe in a slightly different context, if we become role models in our societies, where people can relate to us, in my own community, I think that is one way of encouraging young women to look ahead, to think of making better of their education and converting such education into higher self-esteem and higher confidence. That would lead to real empowerment. So if each of us act as role models in our community, I cannot act as a role model in a community which does not relate to me. So wherever we belong, if we try to live up to the accepted norms and yet make important, significant strides, that may make a difference.
I'm going to let whoever has the microphone, because I can't see it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph, and I am from Mozambique. My question does not only go to the panelists, but to everybody in the room. The issue of culture, tradition, and norms seems to have great impact on women's education. I get the example specifically from Africa. In my country, we have got the traditional practice which we call initiation rites, where young girls, as soon as they start their menstrual cycle, they are taken outside of the compounds or the communities where they are taught on how to handle, how to take care of their bodies, sexual and reproductive health. So far, so good. My problem begins when my problem comes when they begin to teach young girls how to satisfy men in bed. That is part of that initiation process. And some debate has started in my country around some of these traditional practices which we need to get rid of. And I would relate it, for example, to FGM in some of the Western countries. It has brought about a lot of debate about these practices. So the challenge that is coming up in Mozambique is that this debate has been transformed into a political issue, just because it's a conversation between 2 or 3 ethnic groups. One ethnic group trying to defend its culture, saying this is our identity, despite the fact that they realize that this traditional practice is hindering girls' access to education. So if you look at that northern region, you'll find that that is the region with highest levels of girl-child dropout from school, highest levels of early marriages, child mortality rates, high levels of HIV infection. So I'm wondering if you in India or any other part of the country, you have had situations whereby people raise up debate on eliminating some cultural practices and how these debates have been handled.
So I know, I value your question, and I know that we're totally out of time. So I'm wondering if we can table that and make it a tabletop discussion among everyone to come back to you with some ideas and solutions and thoughts on that. And I apologize for running out of time, but I want to thank Sreedipta and Sharmistha so much for this and for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the entire team at Presidential Precinct, for making this happen.